1943 flight for freedom, this myth suggests that the Earhart flight was completely engineered by Franklin Roosevelt to spy on the Japanese. By the end of that decade, United Press and Army intelligence called this story groundless. And then Jackie Cochran, a friend of Earhart, searched numerous Japanese documents and files only to conclude that fact that the Japanese had nothing to do with it. Now, along that same line is the Saipan theory, which claims that the Lockheed Electra landed on the island of Saipan. Both persons on board were captured and executed, and the plane was cut up into small pieces and dumped in the ocean. And then there is speculation of an assumed identity. In 1970, there was an author named Joe Claus who wrote a book entitled Amelia Earhart Lives and claimed that she survived the flight, moved back to New Jersey, where she remarried and changed her name to Irene Cragmile Bolam. Didn't work out so well for either the author or the publisher because they were sued by the real Irene Bolam, and the book was immediately pulled from the shelves. You never got to read it. So where'd she go? Search me. Lots of people want to know. Lots of people think they might know, but no one really does know. I presented some of this story to you a year ago when the buzz about the new Tigger 5 games were all coming out. At that time, this amazing disappearance story was not only current news, but also an illustration for humanity's need to know. We are by nature uncomfortable with ambiguity. We find it very unsatisfying to live with questions if there's any possible way that we can get the answers, even if those answers might be incorrect. Case in point, the index cards each of you filled out at Kristen's request last Sunday. It was a picture-perfect example of our need to know hard and fast answers to some of our most difficult of questions. The assignment she gave each of us was to answer this one question. If you had an audience with God, what would you ask? With all the deep and thoughtful responses that I've gone through this week, and actually created a spreadsheet so we could categorize really fascinating responses, this was one of the questions. Where is Amelia Earhart? Seems kind of crazy, doesn't it, that you would ask God, where is Amelia Earhart? And probably it's meant to be a little funny and catty. I'm just assuming now. Could be totally serious, but I'm assuming. But it's nonetheless an intriguing pondering. I'm not really sure how God might respond to such a question. I can, however, answer that question myself with some degree of certainty. She's deceased. We may not know how she died, but at 117 years past the date of her birth, I'm fairly sure she's gone. I don't think there's much doubt about it. Now that may seem a little disrespectful, and I assure you that that's not my intention. I'm merely pointing out that despite the initial grief, the painstaking search, and the years of speculation as to why and where she went down, the result is the same. She ain't here no more. Now I know this is going to sound a bit strange, maybe a lot strange, but indulge me for a moment. There was a second question that intrigued me on those index cards to God, and it read, where do you see the future of the church? Now I'm going to use a little bit of my interpretive skill, and I'm assuming that means the church with a big C, the universal church, and not New Song in particular. Don't know that, but I just assumed that it's that way. I haven't gotten a divinely inspired answer thus far, actually. But my hunch is that God's response would be something like this. Search me. It wasn't my idea. You see, like the Amelia Earhart story, I'm not particularly sure that God will lay the answers in our lap. I'm not suggesting that God wants us to struggle through it, but I do think there's some divine intervention to our quest for some sense of knowledge and closure, and the reasoning that helps bring clarification to those questions that we have. God may be actually helping us get closer to the answer by gifting us with the intellect so that we can begin to deduce reasonable answers to those questions. You might say, God is answering us through our questions. So let's look back on our analysis of Amelia Earhart's story and see what process that we can bring to the church question. What do we know about the church? Number one, as I kind of tongue-in-cheek said before, but I think it's true, God didn't create it. It is instead a brainchild of the Apostle Paul in the mid-first century. Let's think about this now. The God of the Old Testament is mainly concerned with the ancient Hebrew people. They are Jews. And how those people will survive and evolve over time into an obedient bunch, taking care of each other and creation. When Jesus comes into the picture, there still isn't any talk of creating institutions of like-minded members that can set the world straight, keep order amongst the rowdies, and make sure that no interlopers learn the secret knock and handshake to get in the church front door. This truly was not God's idea. Second, when Paul did sanction the creation of these covert house churches stuck smack dab in the middle of Roman territory, he did so out of great diversity. Paul's message in most of his writings, like today, has to do with everyone coming together and getting along for the good of the whole. When one thrives, everyone thrives. It's called being the body of Christ. Our text for today is just one of several where Paul is making convincing arguments that both Jewish and Greek, or Gentile Christians, should come together. This was as diverse as one could get in the ancient world, and Paul was calling them to embrace that diversity. To be the church for Paul meant to look past the cultural differences and to cast away their different faith practices. The church should be blind to all things that separate one human being from another. And next, the church, according to Paul, is supposed to be made up of people who follow the example of Jesus. Simple as that. Maybe not so simple, but face it. In the first century, all things Roman was the fad. Christian communities didn't at all fit into that picture. So laying low was the answer. There were no bells in towers, no steeples rising to the heavens, no billboards along the Jerusalem freeways to bring in the masses. This was a fly under the radar operation. And anything that was done to upset that apple cart was strictly frowned upon. So consequently, the correct formula for being Christian was simply to love God and love your neighbor at least as much as you love yourself. That was it. That's what it was about. And then last, Amelia Earhart, before her presumed crash, had veered off the path and was flying around aimlessly until she finally went down. The church, as author and teacher Diana Butler Bass attested a couple of weeks ago that we heard at Village Presbyterian Church, has also, she says, deviated from Paul's original plans and is flying around without a clear path. Instead of acting like Jesus, it's become the landlord of the big, unutilized buildings that need to be maintained. It tries desperately to be relevant, but always seems to be decades behind societal changes. And instead of trying to do the important work of God out in the world, it is still focused on bringing people in. But here's where the two stories diverge. We know that when the Lockheed Electra went down, we know that went down. The good news is the church isn't there, at least at this point. Our answer, I believe, is in the concepts of Paul. Paul would expect the church to be redefining itself constantly by looking at those original principles of loving God and loving neighbor, and in all things do what Jesus would do. So, what does that look like? I don't exactly know yet. But if we follow the pattern set before us by Paul, instead of asking ourselves, where did he go? Or where did the church go? We might be asking, where are we going? Where is the church going? I don't know about you, but I think that's a really great question. And if we ask it enough, and if we do enough, try and find answers,